All right, let's talk about one of those topics in the comic collecting hobby that sparks way more debate than you'd think it does. White pages. Do they really matter more than other page qualities? Or is it sometimes just a nice bonus that people overthink? And like a lot of things in this hobby, the real answer to this question lives in the gray area. Now, first, I think it's important to frame this the right way. Page quality is one of those things where experience, expectations, and personal taste all collide. And that's why it's such a nuanced topic. White pages have become, for better or worse, the shorthand for best possible copy in the minds of a lot of collectors. And that's just the truth of the matter. I mean, people see white pages on a certain book and it can be pretty impressive depending on what we're talking about. There's an immediate psychological response that it feels cleaner, it feels fresher. You see a lot of notes and comic auctions about newsstand fresh white pages. I mean, pretty much any of the major auction houses highlight it when a book is going with white pages. It also suggests that the book was cared for, stored well, and somehow escaped the natural aging process that comics were never designed to survive for in the first place. And that reaction isn't irrational either, because page quality absolutely does matter. And white pages are objectively closer to the book's original state when it rolled off the press. But I want to be clear about this. Page quality isn't binary, okay? It's not white pages versus everything else. There's obviously a spectrum here with off-white to white, off-white, off-white to cream, cream, light tan, tan, brittle. I mean, and within this spectrum, there are massive differences in eye appeal and long-term survivability. And an off-white to white book can look nearly identical to a white page copy when you're actually reading it. I mean, we're talking about a very fine line here. And I think even if you were to submit a book to CGC, comes back off white to white, you could send it back in and it could come back white. I mean, it's extremely close. And even straight off white pages, especially in older books, can be incredibly pleasant and supple, very supple pages. But once you start getting into cream and light tan, you will see much more noticeable aging, but not necessarily something that detracts from the joy of owning or reading a book. And this is where that nuance really matters, because some books, by their very nature, almost never show up with white pages. Golden Age comics are the obvious example. These books are 80 plus years old. They're printed on low quality paper, often exposed to heat, humidity, and less than ideal storage for decades before anyone even thought of collecting them. And so expecting consistent white pages in Golden Age books is just unrealistic, frankly. And when you do see white pages in a Golden Age book, it's not just rare, it's exceptional. It's an exceptional copy. And even within the Silver Age, there are specific publishers and eras that are notoriously difficult when that comes to page quality as well. And I'm talking about DC books from the Silver Age. Those are a perfect example. DC used different paper stock than Marvel, and many of their books simply did not age gracefully. You can find stunning Silver Age DC keys with strong covers, beautiful color, sharp corners, and still see plenty of off-white, cream, or even light tan pages. And a couple keys that come to mind, I almost always see that way, is Batman 121, Flash 105. I mean, even high-grade copies of Flash 105, you just don't see that book with white pages. Now, that doesn't mean that the book was abused. It often just means it's a DC book from that era doing what DC books from that era tend to do. And that is why rigidly applying modern expectations to older comics can lead to frustration for collectors. Now, if you go into Golden Age or early Silver Age collecting with a mindset that white pages are the standard and that's what you got to have, you are setting yourself up for disappointment and probably overspending. In those eras, off-white or even off-white to cream are completely acceptable, sometimes even desirable, if the pages are still supple and intact. Now, with all that said, I'm not going to pretend the white pages don't matter at all, because they do. I mean, the market has clearly spoken on this. On average, all else being equal, grade, grader, all that, copies with white pages tend to sell for roughly, I'd say 20% more than comparable copies with non-white pages. Now, that's not a hard rule, but it's my observation. I've heard dealers give the same sentiment. And so there is absolutely a premium attached to white pages, and collectors should acknowledge that reality. There's no sense in being like, oh, no, it doesn't matter. It does matter. And that premium exists because white pages signal scarcity, preservation, future stability. I mean, white pages are less acidic. Generally, they're more durable over time and less likely to progress into brittleness. Now, for collectors who are thinking long term, or for those who view comics partly as an asset class, obviously that matters. So, yes, there is a real measurable value in white pages, and ignoring that entirely would just be naive. I mean, there's no point in downplaying that at all. But value is not quite the same thing as importance, and that distinction is where a lot of comic collectors get tripped up. Because one of the bigger issues in modern collecting is the tendency to hyper-focus on secondary traits while overlooking the fundamentals. PQ is important, obviously, but it is rarely the most important thing about a comic. What tends to matter more, and I mean far more, especially in the broader market, is the label. A blue label carries enormous weight. Most collectors, whether they consciously admit it or not, value an unrestored, universal copy far more than they value incremental differences in page color. And you see this play out constantly. A blue label book with off-white pages or cream pages will routinely outsell a purple label book with white pages. Now, that alone should tell you where the hierarchy really sits. Restoration stigma, fair or not, has far more impact on desirability and liquidity than page quality does. And we know that for sure. When collectors talk about clean copies, they're usually talking about labels. And when you start talking about true major keys that this channel covers, this hierarchy becomes even more pronounced. And I'm talking about books like Batman 1, Superman 1, All American 16, Flash 1, Tech 27, Action 1. I mean, I could go on. These are not books that collectors casually upgrade for page quality. These are often once-in-a-lifetime acquisitions for most people. And owning any copy, regardless of page color, is a privilege and a milestone. And at that level, page quality becomes contextual rather than decisive. Now, yes, a white page copy of Batman 1 is incredible. It's beautiful. But an off-white or cream page copy is still a Batman #1. The historical significance of the book, its cultural impact, and the rarity of the book itself dwarf the importance of whether the pages are bright white or slightly aged. And I mean, that's just the reality of it. Most collectors would rather own a lower page quality copy of one of these books than not own one at all. And that's a completely rational position. And this is where personal preference really comes into play, because some collectors genuinely love white pages and they will prioritize them whenever possible. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've said in some of our other podcast episodes that we're sickos. Collectors are sick. They've got their own little thing, their own little ticks. You know, is it a date stamp? Oh, the page quality's out. Oh, you know, where's the signature? I don't like the way the signature's placed. I mean, it's all those little things that comprise how collections are procured. Some collectors are very era specific and understand that page quality expectations need to shift depending on what they're going after. Now, if you're new to this and you're trying to make a decision about which direction you want to go, the healthiest approach to this is to understand the norms for the era, publisher, and book you're targeting, and then decide what you value the most. If you're collecting modern age books or late Bronze Age books, then white pages are abundant and arguably should be expected. If you're collecting Golden Age or early Silver Age, flexibility isn't just helpful, it's necessary. Or you're going to be driving yourself nuts trying to find books with white pages. At the end of the day, white pages are a premium feature, but they're not a moral virtue. They add value, they signal preservation, and they can absolutely justify higher prices, but they are not the sole measure of a great comic book, and they should never overshadow the joy of owning them either. And in particular, when we're talking about historically significant keys that most collectors will only see behind glass. White pages matter. They matter financially, they matter aesthetically, and they matter from a preservation standpoint, but they matter within context. They matter alongside label color, era expectations, and the simple reality that some books were never meant to survive this long in the first place. We have to come to accept that. And when you're lucky enough to own something truly special, something truly remarkable, sometimes the most important thing isn't how white the pages are. It's the fact that you got to own the book at all.